the adolescents and like the younger characters, for me, it's like the thing I'm going through right now, I feel really ready to write about it like in 5 years, like this, like, or 5, 6, 7, maybe even more than that. There's stuff I still like that from my childhood. I feel like it takes a long time. So I think that's part of also why um, I'm interested in sort of that younger age group, because I I wrote a lot of these stories between ages 20, let's say 22 and 26 is when I finally like was almost like getting ready to be, was when we sold it, but then I edited it all the way to 27. And I feel like that was the age group I felt comfortably, had a comfortable distance from, but also still felt connected to. I still felt like I'm only in the last couple of years starting to feel like an adult. So yeah, that's a good question.
I'll jump in. I have one.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of creatives in this chat too. So what's like your writing process? What does that look like?
It's messy. I wish it was like more streamlined and consistent. When I'm really, really on my like stuff, I feel like I try to like set aside 2 hours a day and try to get to at least 1,000 words a day, because I'm in novel mode right now. I'm working on a novel. Um, it's not often, life happens and it's not really like that. Also, I got an MFA, so I feel like the MFA world sort of offered me not structure exactly, because I didn't write during the semester, but it gave me like summer I write, school year I revise. So, but the easiest answer I could say is I'm inconsistent, but ideally I do like a 2 hour a day thing. I come to like maybe this desk right here, or I'm also one of the people who, before the world like became pandemic land, I'll try to mix it up where I'll be in a space that's like neutral to me and try to just zone out there. I think I do my best writing while I'm reading something good. So that's kind of to me a very important thing. And I think generally for writing, reading is probably, I think it's more important than anything else. Reading a lot of stuff that's pretty good is super key. And but yeah, I'm super all over the place. I'm kind of like something like a binge writer. Like the other, like 2 weeks ago, I went to I had a hotel for like 4 days, and I just was like lock in mode, and I didn't go on any social media, and I was like just like going crazy with it. But that's like kind of this crazy binge I did. So I'm all over the place with it. But the key aspects I would say for me are trying to make sure I'm always reading something really good that I just love, and even that is right now I find that to be hard. I just the stress of everything. But trying to always be reading something good, having like a dedicated time, I think is really ideal. And to me, it kind of becomes a holistic practice. So I feel like I write better when I'm meditating and going to the gym and I kind of eating better. And I feel like it's kind of all together. So that's to say a lot of times my writing world is all over the place, because I think my life is sometimes all over the place too.
Thank you for that. That's relatable. So I
Yeah.
understand.
I'm just like everybody on that side, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I got a question real quick.
Yeah.
I noticed you said you started this book at the age of 22 through 27, right? And
I started around there, but maybe it's a little earlier, but yeah.
okay, so I mean, everyone has their different ways of growing up, but like I get like a lot of Twilight Zone vibes from this book, like Twilight Zone
Yeah.
slash
Yeah.
Black Mirror vibes, like but for Black people. And I
Yeah.
was wondering if that inspired you in any way.
Um, I think a lot of people make that comp to Black Mirror, particularly. I think it has to do with the sort of episodic short story form and also like the surreal thing. I wrote these before I ever saw Black Mirror, but I definitely was aware of Twilight Zone growing up. I had seen it, and for me, whether it's Tone or like a zillion others, I'm one of those people who I'm cool with sci-fi and fantasy. Like I didn't name all the, but there's tons of books that I was also interested in that were like weird. Um, George Saunders was one of my great mentors, and he's also was one of my favorite authors before I went to study at Syracuse. So I was into him. So like for me, it's a ton of stuff. But I've always been into like weird stuff. You know, I'm into that kind of thing. So I'm sure the Twilight Zone has sort of influenced me generally. Like I wasn't thinking about it particularly, I would say, but I'm interested in all that kind of like, you know, the weird stuff. 100%.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, now I wanted to ask, if you could, I know these stories are all your babies, but if you could, do you have a favorite story in Friday Black?
Um, it's true because like for me, like it means so much. Like it's hard to pick one because like you said, you put so much effort in all of them. Um, so the first story for a reason. I feel like I want to say something, and like maybe if they're like, well, fuck this guy, and they throw my book in the garbage, I already like kind of got them that one time. So that's like there. Um, but I've had to like read it so much, and also like my relationship to that story has almost changed in this, and because of how I've grown and almost the way like that story has so much shaped the way people think of me as a writer. So it's it's important, and like I'm grateful to that story because a lot of the sort of stuff that's happened with the book is really because of that story. You know, I think a lot of from like talking about the book a lot, I realize how much people have read like mostly just the first story. That's what's really in their head. Um, so that's that. I'm like I have a interesting relationship to the Finkelstein Five. I think my favorite is probably through the Flash though, just because I felt like it was really tough. That's the last story in the book. It's really difficult. It's really different. Um, but I really like the main character. I feel like she's like kind of a badass, and I think she's also like I don't know. She's really strong, and I haven't seen a character like her before. And she's like trying to do something hard, which is like just be a good person when you have a lot of power. And it was just hard to pull off for me. I think that's why it's my favorite story because it was like I spent a lot of time like, is this even like possible? Like is this like does this make sense? That and then the hospital wear and things my mother said, which are almost like two sides of the same story in my mind that deal a lot with my parents. So that's like four, even though I said, but really, I think my answer, if I had to give a short answer, is the last story, which is called Through the Flash, because it's like most action.
Oh yeah, that one is like super intense, bro. I hate one of the more intense stories. Um, I really quick, I want to switch gears and go around the room, get everybody talking, and just like list off your favorite story and sort of why. So I'll go ahead and I'll start. Um, so my favorite story, if I it's it's honestly in between uh Zimmerland and then the Finkelstein Five.
Yeah.
Um, I think if I had to choose, probably dang, but no, I think it has to be. Yeah, I think it has to be the Finkelstein Five. I feel like they're just so like you pretty sure you like you said you picked that story for a reason. Like as your intro, that was the kicker, and man, that thing is something. And I feel like just with the Finkelstein Five, there's so many echoes of sort of past racial injustices. What can happen to like the main like we see what can happen when sort of trauma when we interact with trauma as we see with Emmanuel and his friends and how they decide to go out and murder white people because they're angry, they're frustrated, they're enraged, and I definitely saw a lot of that this summer. So that's mine. I'm gonna try to keep it short. Let me go from the top of my screen, starting with India. If you all could just list off your favorite story and a little bit about why it is.
Um, First of all, thank you for being here. The book was dope as fuck. It really was.
Thank you.
My top two would have to be between Zimmerland and honestly Lark Street. I can't choose between the two. I can't. Zimmerland because I thought it was similar to a show called Westworld, if you guys have ever seen that. In my mind, that's what I was picturing, but it was very authentic and unique. In my mind, I thought it was going to pattern after that, but it was just I love the twist within it. And then Lark Street, just because for creativity points. I was literally reading it like, how is this man coming up with this story right now and doing it in a creative way, talking about abortion and how they are making this difficult decision and at such an early age. I thought it was incredibly creative. And then I'll tip it off to Mike.
I really appreciate that. Real quick, I think Lark Street, I think it benefited from having a lot of women help me workshop the story. And it's like of all the stories, maybe like one other, it's the one that I had to, like, the first draft of it was really, really bad because I was like, not only was it not that well written, but like sort of like in sort of, it wasn't aware enough of like how many blind spots I had as a male. And like, it was sort of, I think the story ended up kind of becoming about how easy it is to like make the story about yourself and not really recognize like there's someone else here that you maybe need to not center yourself in this moment. And yeah, I appreciate it because I think I often hear like people, both male and both women and men, who like appreciate that story. And I felt like, I remember in the beginning being like, am I allowed to like write this? And that's part of why I felt like I had to include in the book. I think sort of like the taboo around abortion is part of the violence of like sort of society's attitude towards it. And I want to sort of like push on that a little bit. So I appreciate that a lot.
For sure. I'll go now. So my top two were, well, picking favorites, but I couldn't choose between the chapter 6 with the 12-tongue God and chapter 7 with the interactive justice engagement. If I got to choose between the two, I'll say 7. But I actually wanted to ask you, like, with that whole, like, with the modules and that whole system, like, I was trying to connect it, like, I guess to like actual like societal, I guess, corporations or whatever, like that have that intent of, you know, what was in the text. And so I wanted to know like your thought process, like, wow, that was being written, and like what's your scope on that?
Yeah. So first off, thank you. I appreciate it. I just like the like Dark Street. I really like when people are into the hospital wear, because it's kind of like, it's a weird story, and sometimes I'm like, people may not even, I know a lot of people might be like, what's going on here? So I appreciate that. But with Zimmerland, with the modules, I think I was just interested in like corporatizing like pain and profiting from that, and the different, like the different ways that or a company might falsely try to, almost like they might end up building up the thing that they want to dismantle. And for me, like the comparison I make is like Zimmerland ended up becoming like a reminder for myself, almost like, you don't want your art to be a Zimmerland, you know, like you don't want your book to be just a place where some people kind of go get their like Black death porn fix. And so for me, it was like imagining like a very sort of egregious version of that sort of dark, but sanitized to like this corporate kind of, I don't know, not carnival, but like theme parky space, and making it as straightforward and like almost like dark, but almost the darkness is hidden by how straightforward it is kind of attitude of it. So that's, to me, kind of like what I think I was trying to go for. I appreciate that.
All right, Mike, you can just like pass it to the next person. It don't really matter who, as long as we all go.
Pass it to Eileen.
So my favorite story was probably The Era. Yeah. I thought that one was just very different, and Ben seeking this like need for approval from his family and from those around him, and needing like that honesty and trying to figure out what the like old world and this like new world that was going on. I thought was really interesting. And I noticed that there's this kind of like theme of like need for approval. And I felt like I resonated with some of those stories the most. You know, it's almost in an exaggerated way, of course. But those are like everyday situations that I think, you know, as social beings we find ourselves in. So yeah.
Yeah, you're like psychoanalyzing me a little. I think, but it's a weird part of like being an artist, because you don't want to be driven by that need to be like seen or loved or whatever, but it's a part of it. Like it's very hard to avoid it. And I think but also just like you said, like it's socially normal for one to be loved, but wanting to be loved, like on what terms, and I think I'm just very interested in what that means, and like what society might ask us to become to deserve, to deserve its like love, and how, and try to and then try to remember that we deserve it no matter what, and like just like, but seeing how much the world doesn't reflect that.
Absolutely. Terrence, did you share a story already? You can go ahead.
No, I'll go. Hey, thank you, Ali. So
this format is like, I feel like I'm like gonna be like, I'm like getting gassed up right now.
I feel like that. Hey, let me.
You should feel it.
Let me say this real quick.
I'm gonna just like say something mean real quick.
Yeah. Let me hurt your feelings. No, it's fine.
This one is the one I didn't fuck with, actually.
I'm actually gonna say something like that. But before I get there, the two stories that I really did like reading back to back was How to Sell a Jacket, told by Ice King, and in retail, just because one, the remnants of like how some people celebrate Black Friday and stuff. Like your topics on consumerism, I think were like really, like your criticism of consumerism. I think I was like, it was real interesting to read that, like especially in like a time when, like I said, Black Friday just passed, holiday season coming up. Like people really be on that. Like it was like, oh no, I am not reading fiction right here. Like it was like a really good.
It's wild in a pandemic.
Right. So, but then another story I am lost in the shit is definitely Through the Flash. I mean, not only did I read it today when I was working, have y'all ever heard of this app called Hoopla? It's really cool. If you have a library card, you can listen to this book for free through Hoopla. It's really dope. So I was listening to it on audiobook, and I still did not, like, I was like, I am struggling to understand this story. But I was interested because of the way, like, you wrote such a descriptive text, but I don't have any questions, but it's really one of my favorites just because I don't understand that shit. And like, it really bothers me that I don't understand that.
I appreciate that. And I think that story, along with probably The Hospital Aware, those are two stories that like, it's like, it's pushing on someone. It's like pushing in that way. So I can understand the ways it can be like, well, this is a lot getting thrown at me. So I understand for sure.
But yeah, I mean, like nothing against you. I mean, I'm not gonna say
No, I think it's good. I think it's real. Like every story is not gonna like. I mean, like there's like so like how, like what is it? I mean, not what does it mean, but like what's happening exactly.
Right.
And that story has such a intense. The conceit being that every day the day restarts, but also if you die, you're still in the loop. Like this loop, it's like a very dark Groundhog Day kind of deal. Right. It's hard. It's a lot. Right. There's a lot going on in the story for sure.
It had me like, is there like, even like, I guess a formal question, is there like a part 2 coming? Like, did they tell you to stop writing because like your contract? I was really like, what happened right here? That's good to understand, but I really appreciate
no part 2, but maybe some extensions through like film stuff maybe.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, I would like to see. But thank you so much again for joining us. If I could pass anybody, I'm gonna pass it to Honey. Yeah, Honey.
First of all, as everybody has said, thank you so much for being here. I'd have to say my favorite story out of this would be Light Spitter. And I think the reason why is because growing up in the era that we're in now, gun violence has been like a very prevalent thing in our society, especially like going to Virginia Tech. That's something that is like always regularly talked about in our community. So I guess like just being able to, in a sense, like understand like the gravity like of a situation like that. One was very interesting, and two, how you place the characters. Like for Deirdre, it was almost like as like the process of like her trying to help the boy, you get like frustrated with her, and then you really start to like in a dark, like really twisted way, like find redeemable qualities in Fuck Ton. Like, and that was like halfway through the story, I was like, is he the hero? He's not. Like, I know he's not the hero, but like towards the end of it, like you understand like the duality of like people that are struggling and people that have like internal demons and how they find that process to redeem themselves.
I really appreciate that. And that's a super, I think a super smart reading of it. And it means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
Thank you. If I could pass it to anybody, Myra?
Yes, I'll go ahead. Thank you again for coming and spending the time with us. We really appreciate this.
Of course, of course.
So my favorite story would have to be the first one, because I just feel like even though it was dark, you really gave like a vivid picture and depicted what's going on in society today. So like even going through this pandemic, we have been dealing with police brutality. And I just really like the way that you gave a vivid picture of portraying.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it's so rough to think about how like the first draft of that story is going to be probably like 7 or 8 years old soon. You know, it's like, and it's every year it becomes like more and more relevant, and like society, it feels like seems to mirror it closer and closer. It's like pretty rough to see that.
And then even though you wrote this book 2 years ago, it's crazy how it's still relevant today.
No, like and that's for like almost like 6 or 7, 8 years ago, actually.
Right. Yeah.
Just came out in like the last 2 years. Yeah. I wrote this book before I thought it was possible for Donald Trump to be elected president. It's like
right.
I didn't even think that was possible at the time, so it was crazy.
I agree. I'll pass it to who hasn't spoke yet. To Brianna.
Thanks again for being here. My favorite was Zimmerland. I liked how, when I started reading it, it reminded me instantly of the Black Mirror episode where they're in a museum and you have the choice to like torture who was in the glass.
Yeah.
And that gave me that vibe because it was a simulation. And I liked also how it ended with stay behind me or stand behind me, which is sad, but also very true statement, which is made a lot in those situations, even if there isn't any danger or you think there isn't any danger. And I thought that was a really awesome way to end it. And it was strong. So that was my favorite.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. People, I think like people's appreciation of Zimmerland makes me like it a lot more. I think that was one of the stories where like a lot of times I end up feeling like I feel like I'm missing something, or I could have like done something else, or I don't know. But I got to where I felt like I could. But people's energy towards it makes me feel like, you know what? And there it is. So thank you.
Hi, like everyone had said, thank you so much for being here. And so I have 2 favorite stories. One of them Terrence touched on. It was Black Friday. And just, yeah, that commentary on consumerism and kind of people going about normal life amidst chaos. To me, it like really resonated with current times. But one that like really resonated with me was the first story. And I think what really resonated with me was kind of like that topic of guilt. You have a man who's like guilty for his own success because he sees, you know, his community still suffering and going through it. And I think that for me personally, that's something I've like struggled with growing up, even to this day. You know, it's really hard to celebrate your own success when people, you know, your own communities, etc., are still suffering, especially like now during COVID. So many people I know have lost their jobs and stuff. So a lot of that like just really resonated with me, that guilt of, you know, sure, you like want to be successful and make it out, but you want to see that for everyone, and life just doesn't make that possible.
Right. Thank you for that. I think it's a great point. Like there's like this perpetual state of mourning, and so it feels really rough to do that. I mean, maybe my thing might be blinking out, but it feels really rough to celebrate because like we have this almost perpetual state of mourning, and it's important. That's why it's sort of important to remember how like our joy is sort of a radical thing as well, and like how important it is to like make sure to make time for happiness. But it is difficult. So I understand for sure.
Oh, I'm muted. I'll pass it to Linda.
Thank you for being here.
Of course.
I think my top two were the Finkelstein Five and the Hospital Where. With the Finkelstein Five, I'm gonna be honest, that was a very, very well written story. And when I read it, I actually had to stop reading for a couple days.
Yeah.
Because like that's how the impact was for me when I read it, because it does relate to a lot of like, you know, real things that are occurring in our worlds. So when I read that one, I like got so attached to the main character that when it got to the end, I just had to like, I had to walk away for a couple of days so that I could kind of like get myself back together and say, okay, like, is every story going to be like this one? Or is it like, you know, going to be different?
Yeah. No, I understand for sure. I think I've heard that a lot actually. And part of another, besides the fact that I wanted that story in front for like the subject, I also, it's almost like you know, roller coaster has, you have to be this tall to ride this ride. It's almost like if you can handle this story, you can handle everything else. So it kind of acts that way too.
Yeah, and then I really like the Hospital Where, because with that one, like every time like something happened, I'd be like, wait, what does this have to do with this kid? Mm-hmm. Or I'd be like, would it like, okay, he feels this burning in his back. What does that mean? Like, what's happening? So like, yeah. I really like that story because it kept me like interested all the way until the end. And I'm like, oh, okay, now it makes sense.
That's cool. I really appreciate that. Like that kind of reader is like really one of my like ideal kind of reads, because I just actually wrote something about that, like building like readerly generosity. Because a lot of readers, when they don't understand, they sort of check out, or they feel like, and I think to be like curious and offer that sort of generosity to the author, like, you know what, I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but I feel like this will pay off. And then it does. Like, that's a really cool approach to like, to me, like reading in general. It's actually like one of the things I'm like, for me, I think to like my stuff, you almost have to be that kind of reader, or else, because everything might not be exactly perfectly clear in the beginning. So I appreciate that very much.
Did everybody go, or?
Oh no, we still got Ari and Derek left.
And Devon is go too. So we gonna kick it to Ari. We can't see.
What's up with that?
Ari, can you hear us? All right, you know, we're gonna kick it to Devon. I don't think he can hear us right now. Devon, you can go ahead.
All right. Well, I was actually trying to debate like since last night when we got that message, which one's my favorite. I think I could go with The Era. Because to me, right after the Finkelstein 5, like the era was kind of a breath of fresh air after reading that deep.
Yeah.
It was like the era made me laugh in a way, but at the same time, it made me think a lot. Like it to me, everyone seemed kind of childlike in a way. Like where they always said something that's on their mind, no matter how harsh or cruel or funny, stupid it was. Everyone just said what was on their mind, and I was thinking like, would that work in like actual modern era? Like, I don't think people can do that and not act on emotion, because it was frowned upon to act on your emotion too. So it was kind of like, I don't know. It made me think of all these scenarios in my head. It made me just create these own little stories in my head while I was reading it. Like, what if this? What if that? And and I don't know if you placed that light story right after the Finkelstein File on purpose, to give us some breathing room between that and Zimmerland and the other ones. But I liked it because I liked all of them. Let me say that. But the era was like, it made me laugh, and I wasn't expecting to laugh in this book.
I appreciate that. For me, like humor is like a big part of like my whole thing for everything, you know. But I think that humor is a little bit more forward in the era, and absolutely, I think of it like I like for artists I really like I like to have like I like to listen to the albums like front to back, you know. And like I like when you do that, you get like a different thing. Like I don't know, like a Good Kid, Mad City type album, you know. And so like I like track listed out like thinking about that. So you start off with that sort of really big kind of really intense story about violence and Black identity and culture and all that stuff, and then it's almost like the actual second story is a really short one, things my mother said, and that's almost like a brief interlude of like my real life. You know, it's almost like if it was an album, that'd be like the 1 minute and like 42-second song that like you like maybe which was longer, you know, like that short song. And then it's almost like the air is like back to the regularly scheduled program, like another kind of change of pace. It's still lighter than the other one, but it's longer and there's still some sort of rooms for heaviness in it. And all the way through, really, I could like say like there's like sort of intentionality all the way through in terms of like the sequencing.
Oh, one more thing, and things my mother used to say. I liked how you described like the meaning behind each thing she said, because I've heard a lot of those things in my lifetime too, and I never thought about it from that perspective or that point of view. Like the reason behind it kind of opened up my mind a little bit.
It took me a long time, I think, to really appreciate that way. When I was on book tour, there would be so many Black moms that would come up and be like, you know, because they like appreciate me like seeing that part of who they are and how they communicate. And so yeah, it took me a long time though. I think that's why I wrote it. Like I couldn't see it when I was younger, and finally, you know what? She was always saying the things I wanted to hear, but not always in like my way of understanding them.
All right. Can you hear us now? Is your audio working? Yeah, bro. We can't hear you, bro. All right, let's just go to Derek real quick. Derek, can you hear us? Is your audio working?
Yeah, it's good. Like everybody else said, thank you for coming to the Zoom meeting for us and talking with us. My favorite stories were the first two, Finkelstein 5 and Things My Mother Said.
Yeah.
Finkelstein 5 because it's very, very relatable. If I had read that anywhere else, I wouldn't doubt that it would be true. That wouldn't be true. It's very relatable. I think almost everybody has had to tone down who they are at some point in time to appease to the world, turn down your Blackness. We've all done that. And there's a line in there specifically that really stuck out to me. That Boogie had told Emmanuel on the bus, your brother, even if you ain't met him a day in your life, is your brother.
Yeah.
And that's really stuck with me. I don't know why, but it just really stuck with me, and how we had this responsibility of making sure that everyone else around us is straight, that of us that are straight, and we can't let anybody lack or anything like that. And that really stuck out to me. And then and things my mother said is very relatable as well, because my mother's always told me, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, it's my mother right here. And my mother's always made sacrifices, unnamed sacrifices, to provide for me and my sisters. So while I've never had to experience going without utilities, I've had to experience other things, and that she will always provide for us no matter what. Like if we did run out of utilities and power, she would cook outside on the stove, and she wouldn't tell anybody about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, like shade. Thank you. But yeah, there's so much that moms will do for like that's to be unmet. And in my case, that story happens to be just a thing that happened. That story happens to be a thing that happened, and that's I remember it when it did happen. I was almost too like something shocking happened. You kind of just put it away in your mind, and I think years and years later, I was able to think about wow, and have like sort of a real different kind of appreciation for it. So yeah, I know a lot of people like sort of that one sort of resonates with them for those reasons. So I appreciate that.
All right, Parker. Last chance before we move on, bro. You want to try to you want to try this again?
I mean, worst case, you could type it too. Just I want to feel. That's funny.
All right. Well, yeah, we're just gonna for now move on, and then if you get a question, just type it in there. So yeah, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So let's finally get into this book. Nana, if you have somewhere to go, please understand. We really appreciate you being here. Anyway, I want to try to get to as many of the stories as possible so we can get a deep dive. So yeah, let's get right into it. First story. So Finkelstein 5. We can just like this is just popcorn. Everybody can just, if you have something to say, unmute your mic and let's just talk. For me, that was my favorite one because it just meant so much. And honestly, Nana, the fact that I feel like Black Mirror owes you some money, because it seems like they got a lot of their ideas from you. So you wrote this before them, but I think the main character, Emmanuel, I think the whole idea about your Blackness and how we've had to Black people and people of color in general have had to dial back their color to sort of appease the masses. I think that's something we really relate to. And then we have this character at the end who ends up killing himself. I'm sorry, after he surrenders, he ends up getting killed anyway by the police. And then it shows that he sort of, it's funny because when him and his friend, when they go to the car to go seek vengeance on, for the Finkelstein 5, you have Emmanuel who, given the opportunity of killing this, I think the white couple was in a car, he decides not to do it. And for me, that just sort of shows the humanity that we have, even amidst the rage and the fury that we sometimes possess when we hear verdicts about, in the book, this man being chopping up, children with a chainsaw. And so I just want to open the floor up. What were you all's takeaways from that? Like, has there ever been a moment where you've in your life had to feel like you've had to calm down your Blackness or your color?
I think building off of what Derek said, I think many of us have. I think some of us, we may have evolved to a different space to where we have stepped into a level of being unapologetic in ourselves, but definitely opening up into the professional world, or you trying to get that internship, or you trying to get that specific job, you thought that you had to code switch. So for me, that's why it resonated so much, because it would be moments and times where I would have to catch myself and try not to, dial back on my Blackness, whether it's my hair. Well, I shouldn't wear that fro to this interview because I don't want to be at an 8.8. Maybe I should get it straightened, or maybe I should wear it back in a bun. So that aspect of it was very relatable to me. And then just the rage that I felt like growing inside of him, like as the pages went on. Like it was just something that I think, again, we've all experienced just with everything that has been going on in our world, in our lifetimes. How many times have we seen a verdict come back where you knew what it was going to happen, but you still had a level of hope and desire that justice would be served, and it just wasn't. And then when you would read the pages about them discussing the actual court case, and you were listening to the lawyers and thinking, this is so absurd. This man has no argument. What are you talking about? Defending your children? What, sir? But when you think about just Trayvon Martin, like, it's, of course he's going to jail, but in his particular verdict, that just wasn't the case. And it was just, again, like Nehemiah said, and so many others, it was unfortunately and very beautifully written, but relatable to where we are on so many fronts.
Yeah, I like that phrase that was used, like the clicking heat in the chest that like Manny would feel, because I was like, man, that's such a beautiful way, like this juxtaposition way of describing exactly what that like dialing back feels like, and how like you just wrestle with that, like you really eat that feeling, like it eats at you at your core. Like,
yeah, I mean, and like with the code switching, there's so many different types of code switching, I think, like, and I remember like if you're Black moving through the world, especially through white spaces, there's certain things that people are gonna like think about you doing, whatever. But I know there's times women may have to code switch to be in certain spaces. I know the queer community, someone said that like Black queer individuals are like the masters of code switching. There's so many types of different code switching they might have to, that they might have to do. And so I think it's like, there's so many different ways that different people are expected to change and like shrink or move themselves. And I think with particular some groups, is sometimes if you don't, your like livelihood or life is at stake, and I think being aware of that is, the thing that my frustration that I felt, because I know for me, like it's become kind of like a life goal that like I can be my real self, whoever, because at the same time, I think it's also like important, like the scales, like that's Emmanuel. I mean, this is like, I'm saying this as like a reader, because my reading is like different from someone else's reading, even though I wrote it, like I don't want to like be like, this is it. I really like believe in like sort of like the quote unquote death of the author. Everyone's thing is the same, but like for me, like Emmanuel's like the scales, like Emmanuel's understanding of the stereotype assigned to his like race, but there is no such thing as like a 10 or it was 1 or a 5. You know what I mean? Like that you're yourself. There is a such thing as changing who you are based on like trying to like be an upwardly mobile individual, but like there is no like perfect, there's no perfect score for being Black. Whoever you are, being yourself authentically, if you're Black, that's like what that is to me, So I say that because the question people often ask me when I go do these interviews or whatever is like, what are you at right now? Like what's my scale at right now? And I think they think it's like the super clever question they're coming out with. And it makes me like, that's why I was talking about my relationship to the story has changed. That's like one small example of one of the reasons it has. And I'm like, I say basically what I just said. It's like, I'm at a 10 or a 0 or whatever. I don't know. I'm being myself right now. And that's, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. That was like a long interjection.
Anybody else have any I'm sorry, Flex, you about to say something?
Yeah, I want to say like early on, like not early, but like a little after the middle, when he was Emmanuel was shopping and the security guard asked him for a receipt, it made me recall so many instances when that like either happened to me or someone I'm with and around. But like I thought something was gonna happen there, that like as I was reading, and I was kind of like in my head picturing it and like telling Emmanuel to calm down. Because the whole time I'm thinking that he's gonna cuss out the officer, give him a reason to do something, because he was gonna be able to control his rage. But it just felt really relatable, like that one little story, because I seen it happen so many times, or it happened to me so many times where this person's walking out with a TV with no receipt. Then I'm getting a soda in Walmart, and it's like, hey, where's your receipt? You know, it's just
Yep.
yeah.
I just wanted to say that like the section of that story where you know, the main character actually starts to participate in, you know, busting the windows out and like feeling his rage and like actually like feeling like he's expressing the things that he feels. That kind of reminded me of that part of Queen and Slim with the little boy when he went to that protest after his dad told him not to, but he went because he was already so bothered by all the things that he was seeing on the television and all the things that were happening to like the people around him. And then he went, and it was like in that moment, he was full of everything that he felt, and he was very like expressive, and then like he ended up, you know, dying. So like that part of the story also reminded me of that part of that movie too, because that was another thing that like I kind of got attached to that person, and it's like I really don't want anything bad to happen to this character, and then, you know, something happens.
Right. Yeah. Piggybacking right off of what Linda was saying, like, yeah, I just felt like, you know, nah, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything at the end. You know, like just speaking from my own perspective, like from like protesting all this summer out in Richmond, like I saw a lot of this scene, like a lot of this, and you know, where a lot of my comrades and my friends would like get arrested in front of me, and I'm like, wait, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. And feeling that rage, like you wanna bust out windows. You wanna throw bricks. You need. We want to express that rage, but it's a rage that's coming from a monster that they made us into. Like we don't feel this way for no reason at all. So at the end, you know, I was like, you know, this is tragic, you know, that this is how he's gonna go out when you see his humanity, that this is not something that he actually wants to do. Meanwhile, the trial's going on, and we see how ridiculous that is. But also, it's like this seems like like, you know, this is a novel, but this isn't a fantasy. You know, this is a like real. This is something that we could actually go through, and people have gone through. So yeah, that was just piggybacking off what Linda was saying. That was yeah, that zone that it definitely hit.
Thank you. It's sad how much I think it's like reconnecting with people. It's funny, like a couple, like maybe I guess like it's got to be 6 months ago or 5 months ago now. I remember my agent was like, "Oh, you want to do this to some interview?" And then the book had come out in Germany, but then suddenly, like, it had been out for a while in Germany, but then suddenly, like, there was like a bunch of calls for it, and I was like, I don't know why. I was like, what's going on? Like, why? And I realized it was because of Ahmaud Arbery had gotten killed, and it's like a weird thing that, I'm talking to like these international like outlets about it or whatever, and that's why I say my relationship has changed because of that story. I've kind of the phrase I've said is like you kind of become this like Black Death correspondent now, you know, and it's like it gets like really rough because like you don't like I'm in the Bronx, and so like, you know, they asked me like how, like, have you been to the march? And I'm like, yeah, I have been, and you know, I've been out and I've seen the cops do whatever little crazy shit they're gonna do and been scared and all this stuff, but you know, to like have to like constantly like be a part of this thing, but then also like, you know, make sure you're taking care of yourself and all that stuff, it gets like, I don't know, like it's like a challenge, and I see how I can feel like almost like one-to-one when something happens in society and like a peak in interest. You know, this other author, he wrote The World Does Not Require You. His name is Rion Almacar Scott. That's another, y'all might like that book. It's called The World Does Not Require You. And he was like writing about the stuff we write about. You almost feel like a war profiteer or something, because you're suddenly like that's how they think of you, and that's what you like, that's your subject. And it's important because you care and you want to address the subject, but also sometimes you have to do it on terms that are not your own. And that's like gets really difficult. Because I remember when Fernando Castillo was killed, I was like, I'm never watching one of these videos again. And I haven't. Like, I haven't actually, like, I didn't watch, like, I don't watch, like, I remember just the way it made me feel like I can't keep doing this. And so it's scary how real and relatable, I guess, some of those stories feel. And it gets weird. It's for what's weird part for me is like, because they're so relatable, I talk about like their relatability to like these like news people. And then I feel like I gotta like represent it to like some German, like it's weird. Anyways, sorry, I'm talking too much, but that's like a weird aspect of the whole relationship to like that story in the book. But yeah, but that's the book. The world does not require you.
Yeah, I just dropped in the chat if anybody is interested. We'll probably add that to the list for the following month. Anything else on the Finkelstein 5? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead transition over to things my mother said. So we see this family, impoverished living, which a lot of us, can relate to. But it was like a mom who was tough but willing to, do what it takes to take care of her son and her family, etc. Even when the lights go out, she's still able to go outside and make a fire and like cook her son a meal. I think the line that really got me towards that was page 28. When he said, I touched a gray rock, particularly blackened by flame, to see if it was still hot. I felt proud and ashamed. It's like for me, that was like a lot of us, maybe none of us, but if I can speak for myself, have seen like parents struggle to provide. And that I think that definitely does give us a sort of shame, a sort of hurt, but then from that hurt, it's like spawns creativity. From that struggle, it spawns, strength. And that was just something that I definitely could relate to, and something that I thought was really moving. What did you all think about it?
Thank you for that.
Yeah, this is one of the stories that I really liked as well, and I think it had like that same kind of story about like the era too, where the kid wants the parents to be proud of him, and you say that in the last sentence, I hope you can be proud of me, and I think that's something that we want as a kid. You want your parents to be proud of you. You want to be a hard worker and have their support. So I thought that was just something that I really enjoyed in the story.
Thank you. The like Ghanaian parent thing, like immigrant parents, it's hard to get their get their cosign on something.
Yeah.
And now that it's in all of his stories now. It's funny.
Yeah, I caught on to that one quickly. I know sometimes parents' approval can be something we seek and may not always get. But yeah, I thought that was a really nice tie-in to a lot of the stories. I wondered if you had like personal experiences with that, and if there was a specific reason that was in a lot of these.
We're trying to, tons of it, like tons of it. Because like I said, my parents, then they're both from Ghana. They both immigrated here. They aren't ones to like just say like, the stereotype. Oh, if you get a 97, they'll be like, where are those other 2 points? That kind of thing, And so you get kind of trained to like strive for like, I need that. Oh my God, you did so great. That hug thing, I remember my graduation, like you know, and some like everyone's excited and celebrating. And like, you know, I remember like seeing my dad the first time. This is my high school graduation. He saw me. He was like, "How come you didn't get like, or my middle school graduation or something?" And I remember in the moment that should have been like, you know, that it's like some big like, yeah, whatever. It was like, why didn't you like get this X award or something, you know? And you just feel like that, that thing. And so like, I like hyper compensated for that for so long. I spoke at my undergrad graduation, I spoke at my graduate school graduation, you know what I mean? Like I got like some like undeniable, you know what I mean? That's undeniable. You have to say you're proud of me thing. And of course, and that's not that healthy. I mean, of course, like there's good parts about that too. Like I feel very prepared. I feel like I'm not gonna walk into a room on some like not ready, but like sometimes you just need to say like you did a great job, whatever. And so I think for a lot of people in general, like that thing that's meant to make you like tougher, whatever, it kind of forces you into a space where you're you have a sort of you know, whether it be you feel like there's lack that doesn't necessarily need to be there, you know. But at the same time, like in that story, I tried to make sure I said like, you know, I now realize like my mom did say like those things I needed to hear. My mom really said like, "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." That's one of her like little lines, you know. And that's like important to keep for me. So like I think there's tons and tons and tons. Even with being a writer, the joke I used to tell on tour was like, I finally figured out how to get your very immigrant parents to co-sign your artistic career. And the punchline was like, all I needed was a profile in the New York Times, you know. And suddenly it's like, my son, he's a writer, Nana's a writer, you know what I mean? But for that, until that point, it was like very hard to get them to like even acknowledge it. For that, prior to that, I was like, he's a professor because I taught. It was like, it only after like that sort of impossible space comes does that even happen. So even in my adult life, that had been a huge thing. I could cite endless examples, honestly, literally. When I went to I did like a late show, one of those like TV things. I did what's his name, Seth Meyers, and then my dad, when I saw him, he was sick. My dad passed a couple years ago. He was sick though. My debut year, my dad also died, so it was a weird year. But he was sick in bed in the hospital thing, and I came straight after. I went to the city and I came back to where he was. And the first thing he was like, "Are those the pants you wear?" Like that was like his first like thing, and I was like, "Oh my god!" To the end, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
not that you had just met famous people and gone on a talk show or anything, but
literally, very literally. That's like literally. He's like, "Why did you like who's?" Because I was wearing like these like kind of like, I guess the pants he felt were extra. Anyways, there's endless examples I could cite about why I need my parents' approval.
yeah, I can understand that. And I also saw like your acknowledgement to your dad at the end of the story, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to ask him about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to well, we kind of touched on the era a bit, but did anybody else have any like, you know, other comments about the era? You know, we have these people who are, and I wrote some notes down. It looks like, and I don't want to talk too much either, but really just interested in hearing from everybody in the group. But these people who are almost like super honest, and there's almost like these antidepressants that they're taking called the good, you know, which could be in the form of a lot of things, a lot of different things in our modern world. And you know, what were some of your takeaways from the era?
So for myself personally, this was my second favorite story. One, because if anybody has watched or read or heard of The Giver, it reminded me a lot of that book. But aside from the language being really, really interesting, and my book is currently at my apartment in Blacksburg, but I highlighted like each time like there was like a word that I really didn't understand and it kept popping up. So shoe looker, that one was in particular. And then the way his sister talked, being a very overachiever kind of, I'm better than you. And she was very unapologetic in letting him know, you're the disappointment, and I'm better than you. But I think the point that it got really interesting for me was when the school nurse cut him off of good, and when he went to the girl's house and her family was kind of explaining how he didn't need the good. And I related it a lot to, I think a lot of times when people have issues with their mental health and they require certain medication, when they start to feel like a certain dependency on it, that it's not always explained to them in like a positive light. And I think the way that his parents and the people around him and his immediate family were trying to go about it, it was very negative. There was very negative connotation to it, as opposed to when he went to the girl's house and her dad was like, it's okay. You can have other things that will make you happy. That was my take on it.
I think it's a super smart read. I appreciate it. Yeah, that juxtaposition, and I kind of like the point of the last one of like wanting like whether it be approval or really like searching for like some kind of compassion or something, and getting it or not getting it, to me is like really like at the heart of that story. If I like put myself in a reader's shoes.
When you wrote it, how did you determine like what was going to be the standard for lying and the standard for like truths? Because it was one moment like when the guy got hurt and she was like, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, and then he was like, she's lying again. So to me, that's not a lie, because eventually it's going to be okay. But like in their world, stuff like that, it was considered lying. So I was wondering, like, how did you come up like with the line? Like, how did you draw the line when you wrote that story?
Yeah. So if I try to like my best to reverse engineer my thought process at the time of writing the story, and that's another one of the old ones. I was trying to get like, it was really like influenced by like trying to get something like interesting and engaging on a line level. And I was like, what kind of situation would it be that everyone, like a student might say something crazy to the teacher like that, and it's like, oh, accepted. And I built a world that was like very honest, but like, I think when we want honesty, we want exact, we don't want really just honesty. It's like, it's like something like honesty plus compassion. Because if you're not compassionate or like don't have any type of love in your approach, to me, it's really seeing somebody, like even really seeing them fully. And I think if you really see most people fully, you can't be like a complete asshole to them, I hope. So my attitude towards the lie thing would be like, they're into like facts or what they observable truth, them to observable in the moment truth. And so, or facts. And it's funny because again, I wrote this before the current president, or before I thought that was possible. So like, it's an interesting, like, because I never want to like be on the side of like facts aren't important, you know what I mean, or truth, or the reality, or like there's not such thing as reality, because there is. But for me, it's not so much like as like a harsh line, but they're into like, if I talk about something, the truth for them is the thing that's right in front of them and real. But I think the thing that people, the people from who do the era and that stuff are saying is like, there's a big truth and reality that is unseen, whether it's love, which you can't see, but is real, or like that energy that exists between people and that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I think that they're more about like, to my estimation, you are an ugly human being, and that's what I'm going to say to you. Whereas beauty is so much more than like whatever physical thing you might be seeing. So I think that's how they do it. Like they're into like the observable, clear-cut fact of the situation in the moment, as opposed to like a deeper, like kind of capital T truth. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I got you. That was good.
All right. Anything else on the air before we move on to Lark Street?
All After this
Yeah, I
one,
got a question.
dip out of this one.
Okay.
So in the era, they refer to like these couple of major events that took place and was the start of, I guess, how people started conducting themselves.
Be quick, the wars.
Yeah. Could I get you to speak a little bit more in depth on that? Like, I guess the process and you coming up with those.
Yeah. I think like so in the first couple of pages of that story, a lot's going on, but a lot of it is kind of like what people might call world building. I'm like trying to like really quick make it like what I kind of cheated almost by putting it in a classroom where they happened to be discussing the history of the world that day, you know, which is very convenient from like an author's point of view. So I wanted like us to see that like, you know, this is like Earth. It's not like some alien planet. And they got here through some series of things. So I talked about water wars, which are unfortunately like a real scary like future potentiality, like water scarcity becoming like an issue that causes us to like be like fighting over it. And I wanted like so much of history is defined already by like war. Like, you know, if you remember your history class, like the World War II is like probably 90% of the thing. And even to this day, pretty much every year we get another inside like more of those activities are around what's predicated on post-World War II. Sorry, I might have been freezing up. I want to touch on the potential for like us to be dramatically shifted this way or that by sort of these global kind of events. And that's kind of really useful. It was. I just want to get it done in this current time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Yes, appreciate you. Yeah, if you have to leave now, we appreciate you anyway, man. Thank you for being here, bro. So
I can do this next one though. I could do Lark Street if you guys are gonna go to Lark Street, and then I can go after that.
Yeah. We go ahead and do Lark Street. So really quick, my opinion on this. This was more of one of the creepier stories. It was almost haunting for me. Like, you know, you got these dead children. Like what's going on? Yeah, like so you have like, you know, obviously an abortion happened, which is something that happens. And I think something important that I noticed that, you know, these were high school students. Well, I think in like their senior year. So, you know, I can only imagine, you know, pretty sure there's a lot of high school students who've gone through something like this. I thought it was really fucked up how the boyfriend though, like he like paid the psychic to say that she was making a good decision with getting the abortion, you know? So yeah, I thought that was just, that was wild, but.
I know my twisted brain kept trying to imagine what the kids looked like. And that sounds so messed up, but like, you were just very descriptive in like writing about them and being in his hand and then them getting slipped into the pocket. And I was just like, what do they look like? And then when you talked about them, like, you know, like being covered in blood at first and then like getting dried up, and my brain was just like trying to like craft this image of the kids, and I got some eerie things, but I just thought it was really interesting, you know, that they had their own story too.
Yeah.
Although, albeit sad, obviously. For some strange reason, I did not have a problem with imaging what was going on. Like I said before, this was one of my favorite ones just because I thought it was so creative with dealing with such a heavy topic. Definitely between the two teenagers, a difficult choice to be made. On top of that too, the lack of communication that was there genuinely. He obviously didn't really talk to Jacqueline on how she was feeling during this moment. She didn't need to go to the psychic. Like she had already made her decision, but it was the fact that he just prompted and thought, well, you know, I need to make it okay without really dealing with it with himself, that he was truly afraid and that he was the one who was, you know, scared shitless of what was going to happen. And it was, I don't know, I just thought it was a really creative way of tackling such a heavy subject. And just from, like Elaine said, sort of the weirdness with you being so descriptive of the infants there, I think it definitely put a visual of like, these are human beings. And when they kept saying that we'll never be humans, or, you know, it was just the eerie way of touching.
I really appreciate it. I said earlier, like that kind of read feels really like it's really nice for me to hear, because, you know, it's a subject that people feel like really afraid about, and also like again like talking about like my like the book being out in the world, changing my relationship to the stories. Like I think it's important. Like when I used to talk about this story, I used to like try to jump ahead and say, you know, I'm very much pro-choice, and like almost like to be like, because almost like to be afraid of something. And now it's like, now I feel a lot more confident the story is, I can have that personal feeling and also know that like, it doesn't mean a decision isn't hard and difficult for people, and also know that that's a reality that I know is true. And so I think again, it's I appreciate the generous read, because I know there's a lot of readers who also like, and I make room for them and understand them as well, who might see the story and completely shut down and be like, kind of like, you shouldn't write this at all. And there's people like that for sure. Like I've seen them on like Goodreads and whatnot. And I make room for them too, because there is like, I also like would never want to like not listen to someone who'd be like, yeah, but we've heard enough of men's opinions on like anything like this, which some people feel that way. And, you know, I'll never like be like angry about that, but I do appreciate that read for sure, because really what I think I had in mind.
All right, anything else on Lark Street? Okay, seeing none.
All right, y'all. I really do appreciate you guys taking this time with me today, and reading the book so closely and so generously. It means a lot to me. This is a dope ass crew. I think it's really cool that you guys are doing this.
Hey, thank you, bro. Feel free to shout us out on your social media, man. If you if you want to, I mean,
how would I do? What would I put?
I got you. I'll like send you a DM on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah.
I got one question for you, Lee.
Maybe you join our next book that we get. If you like one of the books that we choose, you can join us on the book discussion.
I'm down. It's quarantine. I'm like, I'm supposed to be good. But sorry, what was the last question?
Oh,
or if anyone has any other question that they really want to hit, I'm not like it's I know I have like at least 5 minutes, but I'm just gonna get ready before. So go ahead. For sure.
All right. You got any plans in the works, like when it comes to doing like a short film or something with any of these stories?
So
the other books.
We yes, I've written a pilot episode using the. Is this a secret or not? I don't think so. For the Finkelstein 5, we it actually got optioned by Hulu, but then Hulu got bought by Disney. I don't know if you remember that happening, and so that changed. They basically weren't going to do anymore, and now we're ironically Amazon, which is like the most opposite type company of like my kind of deal. Talk about consumerism, but that's who has the option to it now. So we're trying to do a show with several of the stories, and I wrote the pilot episode using the Finkelstein 5, and it was what's his name? Michael B. Jordan has a production company called Outlier, and they sort of are like the production company helping us. And then 2 of the other stories we're trying to make into feature-length films. Like, so 10 of the stories are for that show, and then 2 of the other ones we're trying to do feature-length films, but I'm actually not writing them. 2 people are writing, 2 different writers are writing each of those.
You got like a time frame on it, like not like a guaranteed date, but like 2 years, a year. 3 years.
I mean, I wish I did. Hollywood people are like weird, you know. They like say stuff and you never know what's real or not. So and also the pandemic kind of shut Hollywood down for a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I have my pilot episode written. Hopefully, barring a couple of like little law stuff, like little like contract stuff. We'll get a writer's room book for the 4 or 5 months, and other than that, I have no idea.
Okay.
Oh, I froze. Oh, sorry. I can see I froze, but the quick version is yeah, I did a pilot episode, and we're trying to do that, and hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months, a writer's room maybe can be formed, but I'm not sure. It's hard to tell with them.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, man.
All right, Nana, we're gonna let you go, man. I know you're a very busy dude. Congratulations on all your success, man, and wishing you the best in the years to come, man. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you, guys. It's really dope to see this. I have way too many groups that I go do book stuff with, and it's like all white people. So this is ideal for me. I thank y'all.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Yes,
Happens
thank
way
you.
too often. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. So yeah, I really want to be respectful of all of you all's time. I know it is 7:30. I didn't expect this to go that long. I think the intro just went longer than expected. Hopefully in future meetings it won't be that extensive. But if I guess to keep it fair, if there's any chapters or any of the short stories that like somebody like this is like a really pressing issue that you really want to talk about, let's just talk about it. Like just shout it out and let's just discuss it. Instead of going through each and every chapter that can be a bit laborious. So
Hey, I just want to know when we talking about Through the Flash, right? Like anybody just like, yo, y'all been waiting. I got something profound I want to say about Through the Flash because I don't. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that stimulation. So anybody.
No, I'm very much with you on that. I had to read it multiple times to see if I was missing something. Like I thought it was me. Like I wasn't sure. So yeah, I'm glad you said that.
I mean, I thought it was cool. Like you had this female character who's just violent. That's something that we don't see a lot. I mean, and yeah, after that, I was.
This was such a graphic story that, like, I found myself several times like having to stop and like take it all in. Like, particularly when he described the part with his mother, with Carl's mom. I was like, okay, hold on.
Oh yeah.
Because how old is this child? And like I had to go back again and reread it. But this was just really, really cool. And it's very rare that like in a book, like in descriptive portions, I can actually like visualize it. But this was almost like a movie, like an actual like movie scene. And I really, really liked it.
Yeah, and speaking of movies, and is it Honey? Is it Honey?
Yeah, that's my actual name. Yeah.
Let me make sure I was saying it right. You touched on it, right? It was reminding me of a movie called Sucker Punch. You remember that movie Sucker Punch? It came out, I think, like 2011. Yeah. It was like, I think, a real life woman's like events, but like because it was so traumatic, she would use like these action scenes to like describe everything that was happening. It was a dope like action movie. So if you have whatever, you can watch it, you can see it. So for a while when I was reading it, I was like, okay, like this is not actually happening. This is like symbolic of like something else. But towards the end, I was like, oh no, this is actually happening. Like this is hard to separate from like something that probably is like a loop, right? It's like a continual, just like you live this every day. So I'm still out, but thank you. Yeah, I thank y'all for just your honesty because I really, felt alone in my interpretation just after I got done reading it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Light Spitter real quick, because I thought that first of all that whole joint was wild, but it just seemed like something we've obviously seen before, if not literally then figuratively, but most times literally, just because before COVID there was mass shootings happening every week, if not every month, and I think that it was. I mean, obviously, it seems like Nana got a lot of inspiration from what was going on around him. I think one of my biggest things was that, and maybe I'm thinking too deep in it, but we don't realize the main character's we don't realize his real name. His name is Fuckton, which obviously is not his real name, and it made me think about as he's when he goes in and he kills Deidre and he kills himself. Then we see that scene happen a lot, where the shooter ends up being one of his fatalities, and it almost got me wondering, like, since maybe like was Nana trying to say, probably a question I asked him, was he trying to say that maybe society played a role in how he acted, because we the reader don't know Fuckton's name, we just know him as Fuckton, and I'm pretty sure we've been in high school, we've been in college where we've only known people by nicknames that are distasteful. Like I remember back in like college, we I'm sorry, like in high school, middle school, like we call somebody Booger Boy. Never knew that kid's name ever. I never knew that kid's name, but that's what everybody called him. And I think, like, was he trying to say that, like, whose fault was this, that because towards the end they try to say this other kid from making doing a mass shooting, Porter, like whose fault is it? Is the individual? Is it to society as a whole? That was really pressing for me.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think later on it unpacked that his name was William or something, or Billy. I don't know if anyone else caught that, but yeah, I wasn't sure about the whole nickname thing. Fuck them.
That's such an interesting point, because like we're still struggling to remember. And I know like there was a portion where there was like a news article, or like it was playing on the news, like what had happened. And they had said his name and like given some backstory, but like even I'm having a hard time like recognizing it. And that shows like, I guess, how deeply ingrained like bad names and like fucked up things like you say to people, like how deep that goes, like, and how like hard like that sticks with people. I started to feel really weird though, because when they were helping like the other boy, and he was actively like helping, and I'm like, no, like I'm not supposed to like you. You did a bad thing. Like, no.
Was anybody else confused about the hospital one at first?
Yes.
I ain't get it.
I had to read it 2-3 times. Like I was very confused at first, and then
I love that story a lot.
Someone explain the ending.
Go ahead.
Can someone explain the ending? I know what happened, but I still don't understand.
They started floating. Nah, I don't know.
Like what I got from it is like the deal that he made with like the monster guy or whatever, like gave him the ability to where whatever he wrote could become real. So when the people were like floating and he was telling the family like, go home, everything's okay, is because if he wrote it, then that was the reality.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end, when the father asked him, what did you do? And it was basically because like he wrote about that hospital and wrote about those people who could fly.
And then they crashed to Earth.
So I'm thinking when he
I didn't get that part either.
from my interpretation of it, it was like he wrote to cure all their illnesses, but the hospital wasn't for illnesses. It was for flight. So he cured whatever disease they had, but he didn't cure them for their flight. So when they went outside and tried to fly, they crashed back down because that wasn't cured.
How did they even to the point where they could fly? Like, how did they even get there? You know what I mean?
I don't know if it was real or not. I think he was just he might have just been writing a story that the 12-tongue God had gave him. I don't know if it was real or not.
But his dad saw it too.
Yeah, but it's a lot of weird stuff happening in these books though, so I don't know.
Because like I remember I was reading, I was like, wait, did he sell his soul? Like what's happening?
That's what I was thinking. Like as soon as the demon came up, I thought it was going to be like a twist at the end that he had to go to hell or something. But it was just no. He basically killed everyone in the hospital because they flew away and it hit the ground. So
definitely sold his soul.
I don't know. I just thought it was just the thing between like grief and loss. Like, no matter, like I think that the 12-tongue God said something like, "Who likes a like perfect ending anyways?" Like that's so corny or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like it'd be nice to tell that family, "Oh yeah, everything gonna be cool, right?" But like we know that's not the case sometimes. Like yeah, you really gotta be able to deal with like, and that's okay, you know. So I don't know. That's just what I thought.
I was just gonna say, I thought it was good of Nehemiah to let us know that this was kind of going to be like a Black Mirror situation, because I feel like without like you letting us know that, I don't think my mind would have been like prepared to read what we were reading. So I thought that was really interesting, but I kept thinking of like Black Mirror episodes. I'm like, I could totally see this like, playing out in like a movie or something. So hopefully if his shows do work out, I think that would be a really good watch.
Yeah, this was actually one of the. It's funny because like when a lot of times when I read books, it amazes me how much I envision white characters. I don't know what that is. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's just ingrained in me. But yeah, like I really like I try my best not to, but I just envision white characters, or the characters are white anyway. With this novel, I could see like just how the dialect that these were a lot of these characters were people of color and Black people. So I mean that was something that I thought was like really, really good.
Would y'all take y'all kids as an approved version of Zimmerland?
Hell no.
No. That was so quick.
I think a better question is, would y'all be working at Zimmerland? You know what I'm saying? Who's working at Zimmerland?
No,
I couldn't.
I mean like what?
He did try to
how much are they getting
change
paid? Like, is it like?
I'd be the person writing on his car.
Like $100 an hour.
Minimum damn wage. Nope.
My thing is, I'm surprised he didn't get sued, because Zimmerman been suing everybody left and right for just talking about him. He made a whole theme park about George Zimmerman.
The collection of Friday Black, How to Sell a Jacket in Retail, I personally really liked, because if you've ever worked in retail, yeah, I related a lot to it. But particularly the story with Florence specifically, and her reflecting on like the employee like that had jumped. That was I don't know how to explain it. Like, I don't know, it kind of bothered me. Did anybody else like get that feeling from it?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, it seemed like a jacket, well, the Ice King story in retail and then Friday Black. It seemed like they were sort of like a trilogy almost. If I'm not mistaken, it seemed like the same narrator in Friday Black was the same, like was Ice King. And you know, he was a good seller and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, just I think in retail, I think that's when Florence was talking about committing suicide, or somebody had suicide. That was something.
Well, like in How to Sell a Jacket, the narrator spoke about Florence as like, if you're working in commission, it does get very, very competitive. And having that coworker that like is just effortless in everything they do. And it's like, ma'am, can you save some customers for us, please? I guess towards the end, I had like a feeling of contempt for Florence. Like I knew Florence, like she had pretty hair and she really didn't have to work for sales. And ma'am, you make my checks look bad and I need you to back off. But then I guess understanding that she was like a working mother and her sort of reflecting on this experience of like what it's like to work, like what it's like to work, but then see that take a toll on somebody, but how important like the money was to her. It was like, oh, I understand why you do the things you do now, I guess.
Did anybody have any reflections on The Lion and the Spider? Because that, I don't know. For me, with that one, when it's the young man, his father left and he was just dealing with working full time and trying to support his mother, and then him just popping up in his life, like at the height when he's about to graduate. Like someone else said that they had to take a moment to, I can't remember the story, that they had to take a step back and take a break. I don't know why, but that one for me was just a moment I was just like, I need to take a break for a second. It talks about how his father had sort of, I perceived it, a toxic relationship with him. He was very selfish. He was very just self-centered. And when he was late, he was going to take him and his friend to the movies. But then when he ended up showing late, like 1 minute, because he was rushing downstairs, he ended up leaving them and not returning. So the boy instantly has this notion in his mind that he will leave and doesn't trust the moments where he comes back. I don't know. For me, it was just a moment of just like, I gotta back away for this for a second. But
so maybe because of some like personal things, when his dad came back, I was like, nah, fuck him. You got your job, you're doing what you need to do. Nope, I'm good off that. But I also tried to understand, I guess, like from a male perspective, what it's like to have like your father there, be sort of like have like a sporadic relationship with him, and why like he may need that support. I don't know. I wasn't really feeling his dad coming back, but that was just me.
Yeah, I was really irritated when his dad did come back, and then he said, "Is this all you do? Just like sit around waiting to paint?" And it's like, no, he like, this is the one day he's doing this painting job, but every other day he like works his ass off. I also struggled to find, I felt like the story about the spider and like the dad, like I couldn't find the correlation. So I wondered if anybody like was able to connect the stories. Like what was, I guess, the point of like bouncing back between the two of them?
I think it reads better if you read first, or whichever one. If you read the line, like the actual line in the line in the spider story, like go page from page, just read that story, and then go back and read the story about the boy and his dad. Like I think it reads a bit easier. For me, it's easier to follow that way because the flipping back and forth was a bit trying to pinpoint, what is there a median here somewhere? Is there connecting dots that I'm not connecting? I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe the boy was actually the lion in that story. Like the boy who graduated was actually the lion. Maybe his dad was a spider, or the reverse of that. I wasn't entirely sure. I mean,
I had a super hard time because I actually listened to that chapter through, I think, Audio Mac it was. So I didn't have the opportunity to actually read it. So just listening to it, I couldn't correlate anything at all. Kind of fall off.
I mean, shit, there might not be be a correlation. Like it might just be there. Like I don't know.
I thought that was interesting though. I also felt like at the end when his dad did come back, it's almost like he wanted to like tell him like everything that he felt. He was like, Dad. And then it ended and the dad was like, yeah, you need a ride, right? It's like he just like totally like didn't give him the opportunity or the space to almost like express himself and everything that he had kind of built up while his dad was away, not knowing when he was going to come back. And I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, like that for me, that was the part that like, it threw me off a little bit. The fact that he's done all these things to you, and obviously it's been a toxic relationship. But then when he finally shows up, I think that for the main character, it was just a moment of like that. Everything that he wanted out of his dad was there. He showed up right in the nick of time before this big event, him graduating, and he was there in that moment. So all of that wasn't forgotten, and that he just couldn't express himself to like even let out that hurt. And honestly, when reading the difference between like him narrating his life and then going back from the story, I didn't really catch the correlation, but I just took it as a moment of his father spending quality time with him to even share the story in the first place. I think that was the thing that I got from it, that he was constantly remembering a time when his father was with him, or when he was able to have that bonding moment with him, because that was obviously something that he wanted throughout the entire story. Well, at least for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, can relate to what you said, India, just because I feel sometimes our emotions get the better of our logic. And, in that moment, it seems like, you want him to curse his dad out, like, nah, fuck you, I don't fuck with you, bro. Like, but damn, that's dad. Like that's dad right there. And it's something deep down that I want. And this goes for multiple relationships, whether it be with a significant other, family member. I'm pretty sure some of us have toxic relationships, but in that moment, no matter how much we've planned to make a decision, sometimes our emotions get the best of us, and we just we give into that sugar tooth. We just feel like we need that right now. All right. Anything else? Anything pressing? Still want to be very respectful of everybody's time. Overall, did y'all like the book? Like overall, was it a good read? Spectacular.
I'll have to recommend to others.
Sorry, go.
No, go ahead.
At first, I didn't know that it was like I jumped in late, so they just gave me a book and I started reading it. And I didn't know that it was short stories. So I went into the mindset, I didn't know it was anything like Black Mirror. I had no prior knowledge to it. So I jumped in thinking that it was gonna read like a normal 12-chapter story. And I didn't know each chapter didn't correlate to the last. So after the first chapter, I kept reading and I was very confused, and then had to go all the way back and start with the new mindset of thinking that each chapter did not correlate to the previous one, except for the trilogy at the end for the Friday Black. And I didn't enjoy it the first time around with that mindset. But after I thought about it and realized that it was a short story and then it was that type of novel, I enjoyed it a lot.
No, thank you for that, Bree. Thank you for that. Yeah, so all right, there's no other comments. You all want to know what we're reading next month?
Do y'all vote?
So Unlearn by what is it? Humble the Poet, I think is his name.
Yes, it is Nehemiah.
Yeah, Unlearn by Humble the Poet. That's the one that won. I can actually show y'all. I think I'm bullshitting y'all. I can wait. Let me share my screen real quick. Oh, I can't share my screen.
You good? You're good now. Go ahead.
It's right now. Okay. All right. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, these were the results of everything. So yeah, the runner-up was Hood Feminism, which was what I really wanted to read. And then The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. But yeah, Unlearn got 15 votes. So large majority. So that's the book that we're reading next month. Myra's gonna drop that in the flyer. I'm sorry, Myra's gonna drop the flyer into the group chat. Yeah, later today or tonight, whenever she has time. But yeah, that's the next book. Yeah, feel free to get a copy. Feel free to tell your friends or whatever, about it. If you don't want to read it, once again, all this is fully voluntary. I'm just happy to see you all. I will say don't count on the author of the book coming each time, because I don't have those kind of strings. But try to do what I can. And once again, big shout out to Terrence, big shout out to Myra for the support and everything. And we got some other really cool stuff coming. Last thing I want to mention, there will be a alternative meeting on Sunday at 3 p.m. Some of our people are actually on Pacific time, so some of them actually couldn't make today. So if you all do want to come to that meeting Sunday at 3 p.m., feel free to. Not an obligation, but we'll be there. A few of us will be chatting about the book and everything like that. But yeah, feel free to, whenever. So when Myra does put the flyer in the chat, feel free to share, feel free to tell your peoples or whatever, blah blah. And yeah, I mean, just thank you all so much for being a part of this. This is dope.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for
putting this all together, guys.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna let y'all go. Y'all have a great night, okay?
Night, y'all. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.